Hey everyone, this is the Black Manga Critic here with another review of The Promised Neverland. So basically this is going to be a review again of The Promised Neverland Chapter 57. And this was a great chapter. If I had to be perfectly honest, to me, this would be a top 5 chapter for The Promised Neverland so far, right? Because like there aren't too many chapters for The Promised Neverland so far. Like there's only 57 chapters. But if we're going to talk about all the ones that have come out up until now, to me, this was the top 5 chapter, and for that the reason being that I believe that is that in other videos I've talked about why Emma is to me the best protagonist to come out of Weekly Shonen Jump, and why she's so amazing at compartmentalizing her emotions in a way that's like really baffling. So for me, this was like the chapter. Like if you had to like pick a chapter that sort of showed just how wonderful Emma is as a character, and her ability to compartmentalize her emotions and like really see the forest for the trees and like, but still like sort of maintain like this like interesting sort of like, child innocence. This is the chapter. You know what I mean? There's a point like, so I'm going to talk about a few things in the chapter that I thought were really, really great. But I guess if I were to start anywhere, we got to start with her interaction with Teacup Guy. I'm basically calling him Teacup Guy because we don't have a name for him yet. But Teacup Guy is the best way for me to remember him because he like a lot of times Pasuka would draw him in a teacup and he'd be holding a teacup and stuff like that. So that's basically what I'm sort of going with. But if we're going to be talking about the Promised Neverland Chapter 57 and Emma's ability to compartmentalize emotions, we got to talk about the way she was just like, here, I made you some soup. Here, I'm going to sit down. Here, I'm going to cross my leg as I sit down. It was so creepy, but at the same time, it was so badass. Like, if I had to compare her to like a character that I could think of, I can't think of like a sort of manga character that I would compare it to. But if I was to think of like a character that I would compare it to in terms of like movies and like TV shows and stuff like that and books that I've read, like I would compare her to like Sharon when Sharon Stone played sort of writer / serial killer in Basic Instinct, and like her ability to just be like, I'm pretty nice. Like I'm gonna mess with people, but like I'm gonna do it in a way where people think I'm like sort of normal, and then I'm gonna end their lives. Like it's like stuff like that. Like Emma has like it's almost like I don't want to like put any sort of like psychology on or like label her in a way because I think there is a way in which like labeling characters in that can be sort of problematic sometimes. So I'm not gonna like call her a sociopath or anything like that. But what I will say is that there is a way in which like Emma clearly has like an ability to sort of say like, okay, like here's a situation, here's a way that I have to act in this particular situation in order to avoid the worst possible outcome, and I'm going to do that and commit fully to that. Like it's like, man, it's fucking amazing. Like when she sat down in the chair and like immediately, right, the entire sort of narrative was like in her control. And there's a way in which what I love is that Pasuka does this very like beautifully. Pasuka sort of draws whenever we're sort of focused on Emma, right? Whenever we're even the large panel, right, where you saw this sort of like the imagery was kind of like skewed and it sort of looked like a weird kind of camera shot with that like sort of flash panel, right? But when we see like whenever we saw Emma in the manga chapter, she's always very bright. She still exudes that childlike innocence, but there's a very real like intimidation sort of happening and intensity that's emanating from Emma as well, right? And also like whenever Teacup Guy tried to sort of take over the sort of narrative that was going on and like the situation, the art would get like a bit darker, right? Like anytime we showed him, he would be a bit darker. He'd be drawn darker. The shading would be darker. His face would be particularly like intense and everything like that in sort of the opposite way that Emma's was. I thought that was like brilliant because like even when you saw those little moments, those panels are usually particularly small, and that was sort of a way in which like Pasuka, right, sort of does like a sort of artistic sort of like metaphor in a way that like, hey, like Emma's sort of light sort of almost engulfs Teacup Guy's sort of darkness, right? That's really, really great. Like, again, like I always will praise Pasuka for every chapter because Pasuka does great, great work. And you have to acknowledge that because a big part of why The Promised Neverland is so good is because Pasuka does these little things that you pick up. even if you're not like, even if you can't like sort of like explain what's going on, you still feel it, and and it hits you, right? There's an affect that's happening. There's like an artistic affect that's going on there. That's like really, really interesting. So basically, I guess like the other thing I wanted to talk about is like just the way in which like even even Ray was sort of like, doing a similar sort of thing, but not to the same extent, right? Because we only saw Ray a few times. Like Ray would like explain things for us, for the readers and stuff like that. But when it came to someone like, when it comes to someone like Emma, Emma's just like, I am totally in this particular character. I'm making this food. Don't worry, it's not poisoned or anything. You know what I mean? It's like all of this stuff, like all the stuff that was like absolutely beautifully done by Shirai and Pasuka. I love this chapter. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I generally wanted to say about like why I thought the chapter was particularly good. But I think I pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover. But I guess like if I'm going to talk a little bit more about why I think like this chapter is the top 5 chapter for Emma, I think it's because if you're comparing this chapter with other chapters where Emma is like, again, compartmentalizing her emotions in particular discussions and conversations and stuff like that, this is like a top 5 chapter for that. This might be top 3. Honestly, because this was like Emma at her best. I think that like if people sort of like this was an okay chapter, then like all right, that's how you feel, that you can feel that that's an okay chapter. But like this was more than an okay chapter in terms of like the quality of it. It was just so well done. And again, like this is one of those chapters where it's like it's very painfully obvious just how far other Shonen Jump protagonists have to go before they can reach a point before they can reach where Emma is. Emma's like all the way, whoa, she's all the way up here. And like some of the Shonen Jump protagonists are like kind of here. You know what I mean? She's all the way up here and they're kind of here. Like they like in terms of like emotional range, depth, things of that nature. They're just not there. And Emma's like full speed ahead. She's like leaving them in the dust. So I think that's there's some stuff that I could have talked about in terms of like the sort of why like particular things were interesting in terms of like the story and how the narrative moved forward. But I think a lot of y'all already get that. Like it's like, you ain't stupid. You know what I mean? So you get like certain chapters and things like that. You get like certain things that happen. I just wanted to talk about what I thought was interesting and why I thought it was interesting. So basically that's my review of the Promised Neverland Chapter 57. I'm the Black Manga Critic, and I'm out.